My sister behind my back is throwing mud at me about my relationship with my boyfriend. She doesn't know that I've heard everything, and I've made up my mind. When I say my sister and this group of friends were my closest confidants, I genuinely mean it. They were more than just people I to the sky out with. They were my chosen family. I loved these girls with every fiber of my being, and would have gone to the ends of the earth for them. To give you an idea of how much they meant to me, I once volunteered to donate a kidney to one of them when she thought she might need a transplant. That's the level of love and loyalty I felt. But now, I feel like my heart has been shattered into a million irreparable pieces. My boyfriend is incredible. He's kind, wickedly funny, brilliant beyond words, and, to top it all off, he's stunningly gorgeous. Think of a male model, and that's him. Despite his looks, he's incredibly humble and caring, which makes him even more attractive in my eyes. There's just one thing about him that often gets raised eyebrows. He's azul. For many people, that's a hard concept to grasp. But for us, it's never been a problem. From the start of our relationship, we were open and honest with each other. We found a way to make it work because we love each other deeply. And for the record, his openness about his asexuality is something I've always supported wholeheartedly. A week ago, we had plans to spend some quality time together. It was a rare opportunity for us to just relax and enjoy each other's company without any interruptions. But after about 30 minutes, his job called him in for something urgent. I wasn't upset. His work is demanding, and these things happen. Plus, I wasn't feeling great. I had a splitting headache that made me want to crawl into bed and sleep for a week. So, I decided to head home early. I live with my sister in a small apartment. Sharing a place made sense financially, especially since we're both trying to save money. We signed a year-long lease, and for the most part, it's been fine. I mean, living with your sibling comes with its challenges, but we've always had a close bond. At least that's what I thought until recently. When I got home that evening, I headed straight to my room. I was too drained to do anything else, so I closed my door, didn't bother turning on the lights, and collapsed onto my bed. I didn't even change out of my clothes. Sleep came quickly, but a few hours later I was jolted awake by the sound of my sister's voice echoing through the apartment. She and her friends had come over, and from what I could gather, they were pre-gaming before heading out to a club. The laughter and chatter filled the space, a mix of high-pitched giggles and clinking glasses. I stayed in bed, too lazy to get up and too annoyed at the thought of putting on pants just to join them. Honestly, I didn't feel like socializing. My headache had dulled but wasn't completely gone, and the last thing I wanted was to be surrounded by a bunch of drunk people. Then their conversation shifted, and my name came up. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed they were talking about something harmless, maybe joking about one of my quirks. But as the words sank in, my stomach tightened, and I realized this wasn't playful banter. They were tearing me apart, the things they say, I still can't fully wrap my head around. They couldn't believe I was dating my boyfriend. They went on and on about how he was way too good for me, how I wasn't attractive enough to be with someone like him. My sister chimed in, saying that his asexuality was just an excuse, not close relationship. Her words felt like a dagger straight to my chest. Never considered myself. Sure, I have my insecurities like anyone else, but I've always tried to focus on the qualities that make me a good person. My kindness, my loyalty, my willingness to go above and beyond for the people I care about. But hearing them mock my looks, my intelligence, and even my financial stability was crushing. They called me the R word, mocking my learning disability, a word so vile that I can't even bring myself to type it out. It's a label I've spent my entire life fighting against, a cruel reminder of the struggles I've overcome. And they laughed. They all laughed. It wasn't just my sister. Every single one of those girls I considered my closest friends joined in. They made fun of my job, saying I wasn't financially stable, that I was pathetic. One of them even joked that I must have to beg to get intimate with my boyfriend. By that point, tears were streaming down my face and my pillow was soaked. I felt like my entire world was crumbling. How could they say such horrible things about me? People I trusted, people I loved, people I would have done anything for. When they finally left, I stayed in bed, paralyzed by the weight of their words. I didn't have the energy to move, let alone confront them. I spent the rest of the week avoiding them entirely. I left for work early and came home late, sometimes crashing at my boyfriend's place just to avoid running into my sister. When they texted or called, I responded as briefly as possible, my messages cold and detached. I couldn't bring myself to fake enthusiasm or pretend everything was fine. Deep down, I know I can't avoid this forever. I need to confront them, to talk to my sister and those so-called friends about what I heard. But every time I think about it, my throat tightens, and I'm overwhelmed with shame and sadness. How do I even begin to address something like this? How do I tell my sister that the person I trusted most in the world betrayed me in the worst possible way? My boyfriend has noticed that something is wrong. He's been incredibly supportive, but I haven't told him the full story yet. I'm terrified that if I do, it'll make everything feel more real, like giving life to the words that have been haunting. I keep replaying their voices in my head, their cruel laughter and cutting remarks. I know my boyfriend loves me, and I know his asexuality has nothing to do with my worth. But after hearing those things, I can't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough for him. The hardest part is my sister. She's been my best friend for as long as I can remember. I've shared my deepest fears and insecurities with her, how I've always felt too ugly, too stupid, too unworthy to deserve someone as wonderful as my boyfriend. She's the one I confided in when I was struggling to understand his asexuality. She reassured me that it didn't matter, that what we had was special and worth holding on to. And now, to know she said those things behind my back, it's a wound that cuts deeper than I ever thought possible. I've considered breaking the lease. It would be expensive, and I'd have to deal with the logistical nightmare of finding a new place to live. But at this point, I don't know if I can stay here. Every time I look at my sister, I'm reminded of her betrayal. And as for my friends, I don't even know if I can call them that anymore. None of them stood up for me. None of them said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't talk about her like this." They all just laughed. Update. Hey everyone, first of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for the outpouring of messages and comments on my last post. The overwhelming support I received gave me the strength to get out of bed, face the day, and take the steps I needed to address everything that had happened. It's incredible how much kindness can come from strangers on the internet. It truly made me feel seen and heard during one of the most painful moments of my life. After reading through your advice and giving it a lot of thought, I decided to show my boyfriend the post. I knew I couldn't bring myself to articulate everything I had experienced in spoken words, and having it written out seemed like the best way to ensure he fully understood the depth of my pain. When he finished reading it, he looked heartbroken. His sadness wasn't just for me, it was for both of us. Being not romantic, he has dealt with his share of ignorance and cruelty, so he understood on a personal level how devastating it is to be mocked for something so deeply personal. But what surprised me the most was the anger he felt on my behalf. He was furious that people who claimed to love me could be so hurtful. Together, we talked about what to do next. He encouraged me to confront my sister, but we both agreed that a face-to-face confrontation would be too overwhelming for me. I've always been someone who struggles to express myself in the heat of the moment, and I was terrified of freezing up or saying something I'd regret. That's when we decided that writing a letter would be the best approach. Writing is something I've always turned to in times of emotional turmoil. Over the years, I've written letters for friends and family for all sorts of occasions, when they were sad, happy, angry, scared. It's a way for me to process my thoughts and communicate them clearly. But this letter? This was by far the hardest one I've ever written. I sat at my desk for hours, staring at the blank page, my mind racing with all the things I wanted to say. In the end, I decided to keep it simple and blunt. I told my sister that I had overheard everything she and her friends said about me. I didn't sugarcoat the hurt I felt or the betrayal that had rocked me to my core. I explained that while I was willing to work on our relationship, I needed distance from her and from the entire situation. It was a letter that came from a place of honesty and pain, but also a desire to heal, both for myself and potentially for us. Once the letter was written, I turned my attention to the next big step, breaking the lease. I contacted my landlord, who turned out to be incredibly understanding. She was so kind, even offering to handle finding a replacement tenant so that I wouldn't have to worry about it. Knowing that I could leave without causing additional stress was a huge relief. I planned to leave the letter on my sister's bed and pack my things while she was out. But, as fate would have it, she came home early and caught me mid-pack. My heart was pounding as she walked in and saw the half-empty boxes scattered across the room. There was no escaping the conversation now. I took a deep breath and told her the truth. I had overheard everything. I told her I knew she and her friends didn't think I was good enough for my boyfriend, and that they had mocked me and called me names. I laid it all out, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. At first, she denied everything. She claimed I must have misunderstood or misheard them. But I wasn't having it. I stood my ground, repeating back some of the exact words I had heard her say. Her denial crumbled, and she shifted to justifying her actions. She accused me of overreacting, saying it was just harmless talk among friends, that they didn't mean anything by it. Again, I didn't let her off the hook. I just stood there, staring at her, my silence louder than any argument I could have made. Eventually, she started to cry and apologize. For a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could salvage our relationship. But then, her tears turned into something else entirely. She began making herself the victim, twisting the narrative to suit her own perspective. Her excuses were as baffling as they were hurtful. She claimed I didn't understand how hard it was to be pretty, as if her physical appearance somehow justified her behavior. She said I couldn't possibly understand her feelings because I was used to not being the best. The sheer audacity of that statement left me speechless. She lamented that it wasn't fair for me to have a gorgeous boyfriend who was, in her words, out of my league, while she remained single. She confessed that she felt embarrassed when we went out together because people assumed my boyfriend was hers, not mine. Finally, she declared that asexuality didn't exist and accused us of faking it for attention. I stood there, frozen, unable to respond. Her words were so absurd, so self-centered, that I didn't even know where to begin. Before I could gather my thoughts, she announced that she needed to leave to recover from our traumatic conversation. And with that, she walked out the door, leaving me standing amidst my half-packed belongings, stunned and exhausted. After she left, I finished packing and placed the letter on her bed. I didn't have the energy to engage with her any further. I moved in with my boyfriend temporarily while I searched for a new place closer to my job. It's not an ideal situation, but it feels like the right step for now. I also wrote letters to the rest of my so-called friends. These weren't as carefully crafted as the one I wrote to my sister. They were direct and to the point. I told them how much their words had hurt me and that I could no longer consider them friends. After sending the letters, I blocked them on social media and deleted their contacts from my phone. I'm sure they'll try to approach me eventually, especially since some of them work in the same field as I do. But honestly, I don't care anymore. The final hurdle came when I had dinner with my parents last Friday. I gave them a watered-down version of what had happened. I didn't want to delve into my boyfriend's asexuality or the specifics of my friend's cruelty. I explained that I had broken the lease and ties with my friend. Instead of offering support, my parents told me I was overreacting. They said my friends were probably right and admitted that when they first met my boyfriend, they thought I was playing a prank. My dad went so far as to accuse me of betraying my sister's trust by leaving the apartment, insisting that family comes first. Their reaction was devastating, but not surprising. I've since been ignoring their calls and texts, as well as my sister's attempts to reach out. I know they think I'm being unreasonable, but I'm finally learning to put myself first. Overall, I'm okay. More than anything, I feel drained. Tired of the drama, tired of the hurt, but there's also a sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm taking control of my life. It's not easy, and it's definitely not pretty, but it's mine. And for now, that's enough.